like to tell you my exercise philosophy. I had the good fortune to move to San Diego and work for a man by the name of Pete. And Pete's story is that he was in Vietnam and he was in the Marine Corps, and he stepped on a landmine and literally blew out part of his hamstring. So the Marine Corps put him through surgery and put him through physical therapy and said, okay, you're all better. And he said, no, it still hurts. And they said, oh, that's too bad, because we've done what we know to do for you. So he wasn't satisfied with that answer, and he went and bought an anatomy book, so the story goes, and opened to page 1 and looked at Mr. and Ms. anatomically correct on the first page, and then looked at himself in the mirror and noticed that there were discrepancies between what the picture looked like in the book and what he physically looked like in the mirror. So then he went out and investigated various disciplines of Western and Eastern origin, kind of mixed them up, experimented on himself, and he found that the more he looked like the picture in the book, the better he felt. So then his friends started coming to him and saying, hey, I've got this knee, I've got this back, I've got this neck, can you help me? And he said, sure. Fast forward 20 years, I moved to San Diego, and again, I have the good fortune of working with him directly for 2 years. So for 2 years, I worked in his clinic and saw 5 people a day and worked with 5 people a day for an hour and a half each. And I probably saw a third of the medical dictionary in terms of diagnoses and symptoms. And Pete did this phenomenal thing where he would have people stand in front of a mirror and then he'd have them walk. So he did some gait analysis, he'd have them figure out where the balance in their feet were, and then he'd do some exercises, and then we'd repeat the process of looking in the mirror and seeing how they looked and how they felt, and generally they felt better. So I have taken what I've learned from him in the mid-90s and added it to all the stuff I've learned over the last 17 years, and I'd like to explain that a little bit to you. So pretend that your body is an entire system, because it is. That's how we need to address it. We can't just look at the sore elbow, we just can't look at the sore neck or the sore knee or the foot or the pinky that hurts. We have to figure out what's going on with the entire system. So looking at your body as a system, forgetting about the body for a second, we are going to build a building. So we've got the top floor of the building and the bottom floor of the building. So we are just going to connect the dots and build our building. Here's the ground floor, here's the front door, and here's gravity coming down. And gravity, because all the floors of the building are all stacked on top of each other, can travel through all the floors of the building and then disperse with the forces of the ground, not only from the front, but also from the side, which is super important. You do not build buildings like this. That would be reminiscent of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Why don't you build buildings like that? Well, because they'd fall over. So, turning this back into a body again, this is exactly the way we want your body to be. We want your shoulders over your hips, over your knees, over your ankles. Again, not only from the front, but also from the side. So if this is your head, we'd want, here's your little ear, and here comes gravity. Here's your ear, here's your shoulder, here's your hip, here's your knee and your foot. Oh, I missed the knee, there you go. Here comes gravity traveling through all of those guys. Now, this is where we want you to be. This is where most people are, over here in the Leaning Tower of Pisa category. So maybe one shoulder's a little bit higher, maybe one hip's a little higher, maybe one knee goes in, one foot goes out, or one knee goes in, and that foot goes in, something like that. From the side, often they look like what I would call the classic basketball coach. So from the side, they're focused on their game. And here comes their head, and here come their hips sort of slide underneath them, and their head sticks up. So, drawing that schematically on the board, we will see it something like this. So the head is up here, and it's coming forward, and then from the side it looks a little bit like that. So here's what happens. Your head pops forward, not so happy, this guy, not so happy. Your head comes forward and your shoulders want to be underneath your head. and your head says, all right, I'm going to go forward, and your shoulders say, well, head, if I go forward with you, the whole body will tip over. We can't do that. So they counterbalance the head, and they come back this way. Hips want to be underneath the shoulders, just like our drawing over here. But if they go back with the shoulders, they know the body will tip over backwards. So instead, they counterbalance and come this direction. Knees totally understand what's going on. They say, okay, got you hips. If you're going forward, we've got to go back. And the feet say, oh, for gosh sake, somebody's got to be underneath those shoulders. So here we are. So they are underneath the shoulders, and everything else is off that line of gravity. So here's where we want you to be. And the question is, where do you start? Once you've identified that you have a leaning trapeze body and a basketball coach from the side, where do you start? So let's look at a picture of the entire skeleton. Here you see your shoulders, your hips, your knees, and your ankles. And there are two basic types of joints represented in this picture. The shoulders are a ball and socket joint, the hips are a ball and socket joint, the knees are a hinge joint, and the ankles are a hinge joint. So the question is, if you were going to pick one, which one would you choose that you thought could potentially provide the body with the most strength and stability? Ball and socket means that the joint can move in multiple directions. And a hinge joint is just like a door. So that means that the joint can only move, or in theory, only move in one direction. So it seems to me, just by the amount of movement available to a joint, that a ball and socket joint would be your most obvious choice for, because it can move in multiple directions, it would be able to provide the most strength and stability for the body simply because it can move in multiple directions. So we've got two ball and socket joints left because we've crossed off the hinge joint of the knee, the hinge joint of the ankle. So now, most people can take their arm and spin their arm around like this. Most people cannot take their leg and spin their leg around like this. With so much mobility in the shoulder, it creates inherent instability, which is why you hear about shoulders subluxing and dislocating and separating. That happens to hips too, but just not as frequently because there isn't so much natural movement available to hips unless you really, really, really work on them like you're a dancer. So, by process of elimination, we can tell that the hips are a more stable joint than the shoulder. The hips are a ball and socket joint, so they have a lot of movement and range of motion available to them. So there we are. Process of elimination, we arrive at the hips. I personally think hips are a phenomenal source of strength and stability for the body and a terrific place to start. They have a ton of locomotion muscles in them. A lot of people are very into core strength, and that's nice, but stomach muscles and back muscles are designed primarily for stability. They don't help you locomote better. They don't help you move better. And the whole goal is to get you moving better. Okay, so let's draw the hips. And then a series of vertebrae with discs in between. But for our purposes, I like to describe the spine as a series of Oreo cookies. So you've got your ramrod straight stack of Oreo cookies balanced nicely in between two level hips. Okay, so notice that makes a 90-degree angle. All is well. Now, what would happen if one of these hips went and popped up a little bit? So what if a hip was doing this? What would happen to that stack of Oreo cookies? So at first, the Oreo cookies want to stay in line with the hips that they're so nicely balanced in between. But then there are these funny things called eyeballs up here, and they notice that the world is crooked all of a sudden, and you get a visual adjustment. So even though your hips may be crooked, your eyes want to be level with the horizon again. So your spine does this. Now you've got a little thing-a-ding there in the middle of your back, and we'll just generally term it a symptom. Some people put super big mouthfuls of words in that category. You could have scoliosis, you could have spondylolisthesis, you could have a bulging disc, you could have a herniated disc, you could have a ruptured disc, you could have all kinds of exciting stuff going on there. I'll say, well, okay, you have a symptom. You've been diagnosed with a symptom. Your back is hurting, your back is not hurting. Something is going on. You're getting nerve pain. Who knows? But the question is, do you have level hips? And in 18 years of training, I've not met anybody with a symptom up here that has level hips down here. So I say, you know what? Let's at least pull that hip down and create a level platform for that spine to work off of and see what happens to that stack of Oreo cookies. And I've had a ton of good success with it because, again, we're dressing your body as an entire system, and we've already identified the hips as the most important joint that could potentially provide the body with the most strength and stability. So it makes sense to me to make sure both sides, right side and left side, are working equally well. I can't tell you how many times I've heard someone say, oh, well, that's my bad side, or that's my good side, or that's my strong side, or that's my weak side. And I'll say, okay, we need to work on balance. We need to work on balance from front to back and side to side and see what we can do to eradicate the symptoms. Because muscles are just like people. They do their job and they do somebody else's job and they complain. So in this case, your back is trying to compensate. This is a compensatory mechanism for something that your hip is not able to do. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about your spine. Here's your mouth. Here's your 7 or 8 pound bowling ball head balanced nicely on top of this S-shaped spine. And here comes gravity, represented by the arrow. So gravity travels through your head, which is balanced beautifully on top of your spine, through the top half of the curve, through the bottom half of the curve, and through the rest of the body, evenly distributed along the entire spine. That is the key. Now, what happens if you sit down all day? What happens if you have to commute an hour to your job each way, each day? Well, if you think of a protractor, so here's 90 degrees, and here is 10 degrees. If your head comes forward, even 10 degrees, things start to shift. So if your head is here, and then it comes forward just a little bit, and here's your spine, then everything is doing okay, except for the fact that you have 7 or 8 pounds of bowling ball headed that direction. So now sometimes what can happen is these guys back here can complain a little bit because now they're doing their job and a little bit more of a job trying to prevent your head from falling off the top of your body. So here comes gravity. So again, sometimes you get complaints here, sometimes you don't. And you have this beautiful S-shaped spine, and all is well. Now, usually when people sit, not only does their head come forward, but their hips slip underneath them as well, just like the old basketball coach. So that has the effect of pulling the bottom half of the spine this direction, and now instead of an S from the side, now you look like a very gentle C. And that's definitely not good, because sometimes, again, these guys will complain, but here comes gravity, and now gravity doesn't have this beautiful S spring to travel through. If you were to take a pipe cleaner and you made your S and you press down on the top of it, you would notice that if the pipe cleaner had a little bit of a recoil as you released your fingers off the top, the spine or the pipe cleaner would spring back. That's what your spine is. It's just a big spring. If you take that same pipe cleaner and make a C and you press down on the top, you notice that you get a better break point right here in the middle. Or because there is no S for gravity to travel through, all the force of gravity ends up concentrating in your low back. So if you have a C, if you are a basketball coach, or if you're a leaning tower of Pisa, and generally most people are all three, then it's no wonder that your body complains a little bit and says, hey, you insist on moving, we're going to help you and find a way, but you'll probably end up using one part of your body more than the other, and something will probably complain along the way. And that's all we have to do is figure out what exactly has gone wrong, what part of your body is doing more work than it should, what part of your body isn't doing the work and is just coming along for the ride, and then go from there. So my favorite example of what a C-spine looks from the side is this advertisement for a seat insert, which I think is funny that you need a seat in a seat to sit up straight, but that's a whole different story. So the picture on the right shows us the man sitting up straight, hanging onto the steering wheel, and you notice that his ear is on top of his shoulder, on top of his hip, essentially making that straight line that we're looking for from the side. Look at the picture on the left. Here's his ear, here's his shoulder, and his hip should be back here. Instead, the center of his hip is way up here. So you can see the pressure that's sort of exerted on the inside of the vertebrae. And going back to Oreo cookie analogy, if you take an Oreo cookie and smash the two cookie parts, what happens to the double stuff? Well, on a warm day, it squishes out. And in this case, they're showing the exclamation mark to the side of the spine that is probably feeling the effects of that disc perhaps squishing out, because when a disc squishes out, it bonks into the nerve, and the nerve can go zinging down your leg, and all of a sudden you have sciatica. That nerve pain gets people's attention very quickly, but again, it falls into this big category of symptoms. If you're a C, okay, well, let's sort that out. If you're leaning Tower Pisa, let's sort that out. If you're the basketball coach, let's sort that out. All of that is positional and very, very fixable, because muscles move bones. And if something is complaining, then I always say, let's at least eliminate the possibility that the muscles are up to no good.